It's time to give you some updated Dynasty wide receiver rankings as the landscape itself has shifted over the last couple of months. About to go to my top 45 or so. All right, let's start with tier numero uno. And speaking of uno, we got uno in a tier by himself, but I'm not a rapper. All right, Jamar Chase. Yes, I have made this change recently in my rankings to put Jamar Chase in his own tier. And when I think about it, last year, the man scored 23.7 points per game. That is 5 more points per game than Jefferson. That is 6.1 more points per game than CeeDee Lamb. He was the only wide receiver last year in fantasy football to score over 20 points per game, by the way, and he was at 23.7. And of course, we all know what Jefferson and Lamb are capable of, but the difference maker for me is just that security in Joe Burrow long term. We know Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase are going to be together for a long, long time. And knowing you have that just gives you a confidence that you don't have in Jefferson or Lamb. Yes, we think Dak's going to be there for a while. And I love JJ McCarthy, but we still need to see that sort of consistency that Burrow and Chase have built. And ultimately, if I view tiers as bucketed values, which I say all the time in my ranking videos, then I have to be honest and say, I wouldn't just trade my Jamar Chase for Justin Jefferson straight up. I don't view them the same. I would need something on top of Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb to make a move like that. So ultimately, that is why Jamar Chase is now in his own tier. But right behind him, and it's really not far, I would rather call this tier 1B, but it is tier 2, Justin Jefferson, who is no consolation prize. Let's be very clear. Justin Jefferson is on track so far, thus far through his career, to be the greatest wide receiver ever. All right, it's the best start to a wide receiver career we've ever seen. Doesn't mean he's going to keep it up, but he's on track right now, okay? So he's no consolation prize whatsoever. I love JJ McCarthy. I trust the offense. I trust the play caller, but ultimately not as much as I trust the Cincinnati situation with Jamar Chase. Now, right behind that, we have 2 other guys in this tier, and there is a slight change for me. I am moving Malik Nabers ahead of CeeDee Lamb. And look, the reason I've made this change is as a rookie with Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito, Malik Nabers averaged more points per game, more yards per game, more touchdowns per game than CeeDee Lamb, and averaged a 35.7% target share. Just ridiculous rookie season from Malik Nabers, and I don't mind if anyone still has Lamb ahead of him, but I think Nabers over Lamb is just kind of getting ahead of that curve slightly. Again, both have wide receiver 1 finish upside here in 2025, which is why they're in the same tier. Bucketed values, I view them very similarly, but I would slightly prefer Malik Nabers at this point. Averaged more points per game than CeeDee Lamb last year. Yes, Dak Prescott went down with an injury, but guys, we probably prefer Cooper Rush over any of the quarterbacks Malik Nabers had last season. And I think he's just going to have a much better quarterback room here in 2025. If his floor as a rookie was 18 points per game, what could this man's ceiling be in his career? It's more just about just trying to get ahead of that curve. All right, jumping into tier number 3. Brian Thomas. Look, full transparency, I like to be honest on this channel. It feels wrong to my core. It feels wrong not to have Brian Thomas in the same tier as Malik Nabers. There's no technical term behind this, but just full transparency, I found it hard to put Thomas in a tier above the other guys I have in tier 3, and I didn't have that same difficulty mentally doing that with Malik Nabers. So Brian Thomas, historic rookie season. I cannot wait to see what he's going to do with Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence. Still a top 5 receiver for me, arguably, but I do think there's a slight difference in how I view him and Nabers. Now, right behind there is Puka Nacua, who you could put at the top of this tier. That's why these are bucketed values in my tiers. He's been nothing short of elite to start his NFL career. Let's look at targets per route run and yards per route run during a wide receiver's first 2 seasons since 2015. Shout out to Ian Harditz over there on X. Puka is in a stratosphere of his own, quite frankly. Look at the top right there. I mean, Puka Nacua is in a different world in this chart compared to like the Nabers and the Effens and the Rices and the OBJs and the Justin Jeffersons. I mean, the man has been nothing but elite to start his career, and I don't think we're sleeping on him here at wide receiver 6 or 5 if you put him in this bucketed value. Right behind him, Amon-Ra St. Brown. You know, last time I made this video, people were like, why is Amon-Ra so low? I said, well, look, who are you going to put him over? Like, you can put him over Brian and Puka because I have them in the same tier, a wide receiver 5. Are you going to rank him higher than like Lamb or Nabers? I can't do that myself, but still, I think I'm respecting Amon-Ra St. Brown in this tier. He is still an elite wide receiver asset. Back-to-back years of elite production, 20.7 points per game in 2023, 18.6 last year. A little bit of a decline in production and also just in, I'd say, importance to the offense, as far as there was just like so many games where they just didn't even need to pass the ball. And I don't think this is a true concern. I want to clarify that. But you do have to just ponder on the question, well, okay, will the offense change at all without Ben Johnson? Does Jameson's role grow? Laporta? You just have to ask the question. I'm not saying it will or Amon-Ra's a sell. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's a question I do have. Right after that, we have Nico Collins. Don't forget, he was a top 5 wide receiver in fantasy football before his hamstring injury last year. He is the clear wide receiver 1 in Houston, connected to CJ Stroud, and he's the same age as like CeeDee Lamb anyway, so don't disrespect some Nico Collins. All right, heading into tier number 4, we're going to start off with Drizzy Drake London at number 9. It is a very small sample size. I want to emphasize that. And the sample size includes a 30 burger in week 18, but Drake London averaged 23.1 points per game with Michael Penix as the starter last year from week 16 to 18. Again, small sample, but very promising early signs for that connection. At number 10, Jackson Smith-Njigba, who from week 9 onwards in that money stretch had the 9th most receptions and receiving yards, wide receiver 8 in points per game, and the wide receiver 7 overall in that span. DK Metcalf has moved on. Even with Kupp there, Jason is still the wide receiver 1 for this team. At 11, we have Mr. Ladd McConkey, the space creator himself. Here's a list of wide receivers in the last 25 years who in their rookie season had 80 receptions and 1,100 receiving yards. There's only 10 of them. Ladd McConkey is one of them. You can read the rest of those names, but this man had an incredible rookie season, and it's going under discussed. He should have an even higher ceiling here in year 2. I mean, what is his actual ceiling? We don't know the answer yet. At number 12, Marvin Harrison. And quite frankly, it's based off vibes. No, I'm kidding. It's based off what we expected him to be as a prospect coming out of Ohio State. And it's also giving him time. The same time that we gave to Jackson Smith-Njigba, we're going to give to Marvin Harrison. We should see Marvin Harrison be more comfortable in his second year. The offense should have a better idea of how to deploy him with Kyler Murray. I am betting on the talent ultimately at that point. Now, next player we'll talk about here, Rasheed Rice, a player that I have been bullish on all offseason, haven't wavered. I know a lot of you guys have disagreed with me in the comment section. I would love to hear where everyone is today, as we're hearing so many positive reports about Rasheed Rice's injury, the suspension, etc. But in the last 9 regular season games for Rasheed Rice, he was dominant. A 9 regular season sample size going back to last season, the end of his rookie season. He's averaging 9.4 targets per game, 7.4 receptions, 89 receiving yards, almost an 80% catch rate, 9.4 yards per target, and 19.4 PPR points per game. And if you include the playoffs, in his last 13 games, he had 93 receptions, 1,100 yards basically, and 6 touchdowns. That is a 17-game pace of 121 receptions, almost 1,400 yards, and 8 touchdowns. And this didn't happen by accident, by that way, either. Let's look again at targets per route run and yards per route run during the first 2 years of a wide receiver's career since 2015. Rasheed Rice finds himself in elite company amongst the OBJs, Justin Jeffersons, Mike Evans, Tyreek Hills of the world. Stop sleeping on Rasheed Rice. He is that dude in this offense, in my humble opinion. All right. At 14, T. Higgins, this is simple. We know this guy can win you. If he gets hot, if he's on a heater in the playoffs, he wins you your Dynasty League, all right? Especially the long-term connection attached to Joe Burrow. We know how damn good this guy can be. At 15, Garrett Wilson. Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson obviously have inbuilt chemistry. We all know that by now from their Ohio State days. That's going to help. If you look at the stats in yellow, that was with Justin Fields. The stats in green, that was with CJ Stroud at Ohio State. But it's crucial context to consider that in 2020, the Buckeyes only played 8 games due to the COVID season. And if you remember back, DJ Moore's best season ever was with Justin Fields as his quarterback, where he was the clear and only target in an offense. If you want an in-depth breakdown of your team with customized trade targets, players to buy, sell, hold, then get your team playbook today by either becoming a yearly Mother Flocker member with the promo code LAND or by going directly to the Flock store, regardless of what promo code you're on. And if you want it done live, make sure you get the live tier. Those links are in the pinned comment. All right, moving on to tier number 5 here, okay? I love this tier a lot. A lot of players I want on my Dynasty teams. We're going to start off with the 2 rookies, Travis Hunter and Ted McMillan, T-Mac. Both of these guys are in great company historically from a draft capital perspective. There have been 15 wide receivers drafted top 10 since 2014, All right, so Travis Hunter joins a group of Marvin Harrison, Neighbors, Odunze, London, Wilson, Chase, Waddle, Devonta, Now, obviously, there's some misses there with Corey Davis, John Ross, Kevin White, but you'll notice NFL teams are getting better at drafting these elite wide receivers as the process goes on. Sammy Watkins, Mike Evans are in there. So I do think these guys historically are just great bets long-term in Dynasty football. And I like both of their situations. At 18, AJ Brown. Look, you can hate me for saying it. You can say I'm too low on AJ Brown. I honestly don't care if you feel that way. That's fine for you to feel that way. But I realistically just don't see a scenario in which AJ Brown can drastically improve his value from here on out. I don't think it's crazy to say that. I mean, he will be 29 years old next offseason. Whether it's right or it's wrong, I don't care. But the reality is people will not view him the same no matter what he does this year. The man can put up 1,700 yards and 10 touchdowns. His value isn't going to drastically rise. Go ask Tyreek Hill after he almost put up 2,000 yards in his year 30 season or whatever it was, right? It's just not going to make a huge impact in his dynasty value. And at number 19, Rome Odunze, who I do think is a great breakout candidate. His role is not questioned in this offense. Like between DJ Moore and Loveland and Luther Burden, these guys aren't going to compete for an outside position like Rome Odunze is. His role is solidified in this offense, and we have seen Ben Johnson create multiple fantasy relevant receivers in an offense. All right, at number 6, I'm going to just have my editor please put the entire tier up. It is massive. And again, I talk so often about how I view tiers as bucketed values. That's exactly what we're doing with tier number 6. From wide receiver 20 at Chris Olave all the way down to wide receiver 32 at Terry McLaurin, I really don't think there's that much difference between these guys. Like, I'm not going to pay Terry McLaurin in a second to go to Chris Olave, right? It's like all of these wide receivers, I would have a very similar value from a draft pick perspective, from my expectations these coming years, than each other, okay? So we've got the names like Olave, who just needs a quarterback really to elevate his career. Devonta Smith, who's a great receiver in a low passing volume offense. Emeka Egbuka, a young wide receiver we love as a prospect that we're betting on long term. DK Metcalf, a guy who's making the 4th most at the position annually. He's $1 million off of CeeDee Lamb, $2 million per year off of Justin Jefferson, more money per year than AJ Brown and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Hate the situation in Pittsburgh, but at least Aaron Rodgers is there, and he's their clear number 1 weapon in that offense. At 24, Jalen Waddle, right? With Jonnu Smith being traded, I know they just brought in Darren Waller, I don't care. Jonnu Smith being traded, that opens up more targets in this offense. Jonnu Smith accounted for 111 targets last year in that offense. Brandon Ayuk, who's one of my favorite buy lows right now, we're 1 year removed from a season with 15.6 points per game and 1,300 receiving yards. No Deebo Samuel, long-term deal. He should feast again once he's healthy. Xavier Worthy, you can put at the top of this tier if you really believe in him. End of the season was actually great, for sure. Like, Xavier Worthy was great. But let's not forget that Super Bowl, a lot of that production came when the game was already over. So you can't really factor that into like some sort of like 17 game pace type of conversation. But I believe Rasheed Rice will be the alpha in that offense still. At 27, Jordan Addison, a guy who's a great flex, but will never be the number 1 on his team. Same thing with Jameson Williams. Coming off a career year, coaching staff is giving indications that they want to have a bigger role for him in 2025, averaging 14 points per game last season. Zay Flowers, DJ Moore, Matthew Golden, who's a rookie wide receiver that I think has an upside that some of the other guys in this tier don't actually have. If Matthew Golden breaks out, like he has a chance to jump into another tier. If DJ Moore has a really good season, I don't think he has that flexibility to really move up and down. Same with Terry McLaurin. So I love this tier. I want all these guys in my flex, but if I'm honest with you, the reason this tier is so massive is because I really, truthfully don't think there's that big of a difference in value from the names from top to bottom. All right, let's move on here to tier number 7. Starting off with George Pickens, who I actually think is deserving of being in tier number 6, if I'm honest with you. But George Pickens, I couldn't be a bigger fan of his offseason. I don't think there's a better situation offseason he could have had for fantasy football. He goes from a team that barely threw the ball with Arthur Smith as offensive coordinator to a team that's been top 10 in passing attempts per game each of the last 3 seasons. In the Dallas Cowboys, a team that desperately needed a number 2 alongside CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens is going to have a chance to truly break out. Like, George Pickens is one of these players who, if he has a good season, let's say 1,210 touchdowns, he could easily jump into that top 20 amongst dynasty wide receivers if he gets a long-term extension there in Dallas. At 34, we have Ricky Pearsall, who is another breakout candidate here in 2025 with that Niners offense. You know, obviously more target share up for grabs. Another year, he's not shot in the chest. He has an entire offseason to really prepare. At 35, Luther Burden, who I'm obsessed with as a prospect, but I can recognize it's probably more the JSN route where you're going to have to be a little bit patient with him. You know, with all 4 of those guys in that offense, with Adunze, DJ, Colson Loveland, Burden, you're kind of going to need this team to move on from DJ for there to be like some sort of upside untapped with him. Unless, of course, this just becomes the Amon-Ra St. Brown for Ben Johnson, which is a potential outcome. At 36, Jerry Jeudy. Love his situation. They didn't grab Travis Hunter, so he's in a great spot. Khalil Shakir is a very safe play, but I don't think he has the upside of some of the names in this tier. And then we've got some rookies here. And Jaden Higgins, Trey Harris, I love their situations. Jaden Higgins has a legitimate shot to break out in year 1. There should be plenty of targets available for him in that offense. At 40, Josh Downs to end this tier. Somehow, despite the terrible situation he had in Indy last year, he was able to have career highs, including points per game at 13.1 points per game last year. That's very impressive to me, considering the offense that he was a part of. I don't think any of us, if we're being truthful with ourselves, anticipated Josh Downs to have a breakout year when we look at how bad Anthony Richardson was, right? But I love this tier. If I had to pick one name that I think could just absolutely skyrocket, it would be George Pickens, based off the situation that he's currently in, or Ricky Pearsall, right? But I love this tier, and I want all these wide receivers. I think they're guys that you can truthfully build around in the long run in Dynasty football. All right, and our last tier here, tier number 8, mostly veterans that are for win now type of contenders. It's like your Tyreek Hills of the world, your Devontae Adams, your Godwins, your Mike Evans. Now, to be fair, Devontae Adams was my wide receiver, I think 36 last time I did my rankings. He hasn't really fallen. In fact, I've just fallen more in love with his situation. But the reality is, those rankings didn't include the rookie class. So if you just think about it logically, we had to add all the rookies into the rankings. He hasn't fallen. So 40 seems really low, but really I view him as like a top 30 guy. It's just you can only stack so many players in your rankings. Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Godwin, Evans, great guys to roster on your win now teams. I think Devontae Adams has a chance for a top 12 season. Tyreek Hill, without Jonnu Smith, could get back to his dominant ways. And then you'll kind of see like Jack Besh and Jaden Reed kind of sandwiched in there. I know it hasn't been the best start for Jack Besh's offseason, but I think we're also overreacting way too hard to like reports in, June and May. I do think Jack Besh still will have a great chance, to be a crucial part of this offense here in year number 1. He's a very good receiver, and I think this coaching staff will fall in love with him. And then Jaden Reed at 45. I think Jaden Reed is maybe a little bit disrespected. I do think there's a chance that this offense could want to throw the ball a little bit more. If you look at the 5 games where Jordan Love was healthy last year, they actually had the 7th highest passing rate over expectation with a healthy Jordan Love. And without Jordan Love being fully healthy, they were like negative 8.2%, which was the lowest. So I do think they want to pass the ball a little bit more. I just don't think they've had the, the opportunity to do so without their roster being completely healthy. But look, there are so many names I could have mentioned in this tier number 8. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of people who are upset that I didn't mention like specific names, but I'll give an honorable mention, like shout out to the names like Cooper Kupps, the Stephon Diggs, the Suttons, the Deebo Samuels, Michael Pittman, totally worthy of being there, Keon Coleman, Kyle Williams, Juwan Jennings, the Knowles, the Jacoby Myers, Darnell Mooney's, Calvin Ridley's, Jalen McMillan. It could have fit in so many names, Rashid Shaheed, but ultimately I can only make a video so long and I can only fit so many players inside my top 45. Because ultimately, if I have to put one of those names in the video, I have to remove some of the names that I've already talked about. So hopefully that makes sense. But I do appreciate y'all watching the video. Do me a favor, hit that like button to show some love. Subscribe if you guys like the content. And I would love to invite you guys to join us on our redraft channel this offseason. We are pumping content over there on the Fantasyland Football channel. I'd love for my editor maybe can put a screenshot here. But go find us on Fantasyland Football. We've got great content over there that's going to be relevant to our Dynasty community as well, and we'll be starting to do more live streams over there. But thanks for watching the video, guys, and nothing but love. I'll see you in the next one. All right, later. If you're thinking about supporting us in this economy, that's big love, and you deserve love in return. So for every yearly Mother Flocker member who uses the promo code LAND, we're giving out a free team playbook, our 2025 rookie report, access to all premium tools, free site vouchers, and of course, a huge thank you from the LAND crew. You're far too kind. That's love.